It would seem uncontroversial to have a duly elected member of the United States Congress come speak at a public university.
So often in the news, we hear about colleges and universities stifling free speech in order to protect students from uncomfortable viewpoints. But despite these instances, there are still plenty of colleges and universities working hard to protect the First Amendment, even in the face of many of these disruptive, angry, and sometimes violent protests.
A violent protest on the campus of UC Berkeley.
These are student protesters, some anarchists from what I can gather.
The University of Virginia is one of the more recent examples of schools taking a stand for free speech. So we are here on campus to talk to students and faculty members about what it actually takes in today's political environment to do this.
This was the first time since I've been here in 3 years that it even became an issue where we would discuss whether or not to go forward with the event. The president of the university, Terry Sullivan, made the final decision, and to her great credit, she was adamant that we go forward hosting the event.
It is astonishing to see how few schools are willing to stand up and actually say, I'm going to follow that constitutional line and say that disruption is where I'm going to step in. Because a lot of schools want to take the position that if protest is speech, then disruptive protest is also speech. And that just isn't the way the Constitution works.
I mean, you can probably say whatever you want here and not have any repercussions, which is the way it should be, because that's how it is in the Constitution.
The university is doing its part to foster an environment where people can come and not be in fear of being attacked by the university or by students, especially when you compare it to other colleges.
The good news is that in our most recent report, we've seen that the lowest number of unconstitutional speech codes that we've ever seen. And of the 449 colleges we surveyed, it's 39.6% of them that have policies that substantially restrict speech. The bad news is the challenges to speech are starting to morph, and they're no longer just in delimited speech codes.
Students complained that her mere presence was so offensive, they needed to post trigger warnings on campus so people could get prepared to deal with their upset.
The most important thing about free speech is recognizing it's only going to be speech that makes people uncomfortable that we have to really work to protect. This does create a real challenge for universities. It's very expensive. The cost that we estimate for the university for hosting this event was an additional $60,000 to $65,000 for additional planning and security arrangements. This can end up being something of a budget veto that protesters or hecklers can impose, particularly on student groups. They may not have the resources to be able to afford these kinds of security arrangements.
Free speech is expensive. I mean, freedom is expensive. Civil rights are always an expenditure. It would be far cheaper if we could just put ankle chains around the students and put them in a basement. But we can't, because they have civil rights. And part of that expenditure means occasionally they're going to talk to people who have radical ideas, and occasionally we're going to have to foot the bill for that. And I don't think that should be any more troubling to the American public than it is when we pay for security for football games. I may not be a fan of UVA's football team, but that's some of my tax dollars go there. Well, some of my tax dollars can go because we want to have a congressman speak.
I really do believe in the fact that colleges should be places where free speech is encouraged. They were never meant to be spaces where you shouldn't be afraid to feel offended, or you shouldn't be protected from certain ideas.
From the school and university's perspective, the event was a great success. We don't have any particular political preference. We don't have any ideological preference. Our preference is to be able to host events that are relatively open, where we can have an informed discussion and dialogue about literally most any issue one can conceive of, and at the same time do so in an environment that's safe and secure.
I'm optimistic for the future of free speech in college campuses. It's a long cycle, and it's in some ways a game of cat and mouse, but as long as the First Amendment is intact, eventually speech is going to win.